Hey, hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Where's Your Heart, where we champion vulnerability as a core human strength. I'm here today with my man, 20 grand, the Royce. What's up, my brother? How you feeling, man?
Good, good. It's
Good?
yeah.
Ready?
I mean, I'm wearing a shirt that says "Y'all motherfuckers need science." Like that's all I got today, man.
Listen, and mine says blessed because I truly am. So we will definitely start off with we got a high energy show. We have a topic today that we've gotten a lot of feedback on. Right, we're going to be talking about MAGA, Make America Great
Yeah,
Again. We're going to be talking to a person who's a friend of mine, who's a brother of mine. We met through a workout program, and just our friendship has flourished from that. So definitely somebody I want to hear from and just sit down and have a conversation with. So we really invite everybody who's a part of the conversation right now. If you think that anyone in your circle needs to hear a conversation that's centered around vulnerability, now is the time to share. So please make sure that you're sharing with your social media, your
yeah.
friends, sending that link over, creating Facebook shares, all of the above, so we can make sure that we hold space for this conversation, and we can start to talk about where's your heart in today's topic. So
Yeah.
that being said, I think we'll jump right into to where we normally start, man. That's gratitude,
Yeah.
right?
Gratitude. You
Gratitude,
going? You
gratitude.
going first, or am I?
You got it, man. You got it. Go ahead, do
All
your
right,
thing.
you.
Do your thing.
uh, so honestly, I'm walking in today with this weird little gratitude moment right before the show. Sarah was out playing Pokemon because she hadn't played in a while, so she's like, I got to go do this. And she's like, hey, I need help with this raid. So the Institute in Pokemon, they've got a new thing where you can join raids remotely.
Okay.
And yeah, so cool. So she's like, here, join the raid remote. I'm like, all right. So I gave it a shot. I'm like, oh, cool. So we failed at it. We're like, we got to invite some friends. So we start pinging friends. And it ends up being two friends from Minnesota that, I haven't talked to much since lockdown. And I used to see at least, once every couple of months. And so it was just one of those moments, like we got done with this stupid Pokemon. Like it's Pokemon, it's but we get done with the raid, we beat the thing, all that's happy and cheery. But really what I was left with was how much I miss my friends, how
Mm,
much
mm.
it means to have friends around, and just like how thankful I was for their willingness to just jump in, middle of the day. Um, so yeah, I think that's sitting with me alongside like the friends that we figured out how to do some social distance stuff for Sarah's birthday last Friday,
Okay.
um, and it was genuinely neat to see. It was so good to see people, even though like these are all people that I'm like normally I have to hug, and there's no hugs there,
Yeah.
and we're all wearing masks and like sitting apart from each other. So it just it sucks, and I'm so glad to have had those experiences with friends, but I'm just so looking forward to the end of this fucking thing. Like, yeah. So there you go.
It's
It's a mix.
it's interesting when you say this thing. There's a lot that's encapsulated in this thing too.
Oh yeah,
You know what I
yeah.
mean? Like I'm like, which thing? That's what I was thinking about
Okay.
when you said it. So, but
Yeah,
that's a
the
testament to
Rona.
what's actually happening. I mean,
Yeah,
there's a lot that's going on, but definitely from a health standpoint, that being front and center.
yeah.
Uh, for me,
How
mine
about
would
you?
be along the same lines. It would be I'm grateful for a lot of things over the past week, but specifically today for feedback. So I've been thinking about the past week or so. I've gotten feedback in a few areas in a lot of different ways for a lot of
Yeah,
different reasons, and a lot of that feedback has been centered around one being focused, and then two kind of holding space and really being cognizant of the type of space that's being held. And so
mm,
um, not all of it was warm and fuzzy, but those are the kind of people that you want and that you need in your life to have that to use Kim Scott's term, radical candor with you
yeah.
in a loving way. So that's been good. And then we've
In a loving way.
in a
Like, let's
loving
not
way.
forget that part. Like, It is for the purpose of love, like
purpose of love, intent, right?
yeah.
And then just feedback on the show. I mean, we're going to be talking about something today that for many people is a very scratchy topic or term or word or that. I don't know how you want to encapsulate it, but it's something that we want to talk about, but it's also something that in some situations that can be very triggering for people as well. So I've gotten a lot of feedback, some good, some not so good, but I'm grateful for it. Take it all in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's just so that folks in the audience know, yes, number one, please do share this. If you haven't already, start a watch party, do your thing. And yeah, keep the feedback coming. We're like, I think we scheduled a work day coming up where we're just like, we're starting in the morning and we're just going to spend the whole day on the show, just working side by side.
Yes, we're going to stay focused on the show. So we're going to be able to bring a much better experience, have a little bit more production value outside of me doing it here on my keyboard right now. When I look away, this is what's happening, ladies and gentlemen. That's what's happening. Then we got a few people chiming in as well. So we have my man Saul. So this is my brother as well, man. We met through F3, which I'm going to explain a little bit, but we're actually sharing space here. So I have space in his office. So that's my guy. And of course, the one and only Sarah, saying how amazing that you are. Happy belated birthday as well. Yeah, man. Yeah. So last week now, we had a lot happen last week. What were some of the things that are top of mind for you?
I can't, like, RBG and full stop. Like, honestly, for me, that's kind of the dead drop right there. Like, there's so much around the Supreme Court stuff, from the racist jackjawing that happened around Obama's Supreme Court pick to having this president toss two people into the circle in his final, like, in the amount of time that Obama asked for one to be considered, this guy's tossed two in the circle, and sounds like the second one is going to get a vote. Like, I just, like, I can't, and that's all on top of the fact that, like, Ginsburg is, like, there's a lot there too. Like, one of my questions, I think, to you earlier today was why the fuck does our entire democracy hinge on one 84-year-old lady? Like, let's be clear. I think you can do certain work, into your senior years. Absolutely. I'm not saying necessarily she should have left sooner or anything like that. But when those of us who look at the court and think our rights as human beings hinged on this one person, like, that's kind of fucked. Like, it kind of means we're toast. I mean, that's where I'm at. I think it's just a sign of the times that this country's dead or dying.
You said dead or dying?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, bluntly,
no, that's what we're here for, man. So we can talk about how we feel about things. Okay, so this is going to tie directly into our conversation, which I'm very, very excited about.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, it would be the same thing, RGB, what it meant, how it fits into the current political landscape. I mean, for me, it's not as deep as hey, everything is hinged upon one person, outside of, hey, this is another data point into a larger dynamic that's actually happening, and there's a shift that's happening, right? Yeah. That's kind of how I see it, and it plays into the whole conversation, because when we tie this into even some of the feedback that we receive about the comment or the topic that we have today, a lot of it is hinged on the election and our president, and how people feel about, I want to say, policies. I don't know if that's always the case, and when people are talking about this, I'm just being honest, right? Like, a lot of the conversations I had over the past few days had very little to do with policy outside of party and person, which is
very true.
Not necessarily how I view everything. I mean, I think all three are involved, but policy should be a part of the conversation if we're talking about things that affect us as people. I'm just saying.
It's true.
I believe that, so I got to stand by that one. So anyway, so time to our conversation today again. So, Make America Great Again, the term, the acronym. And so for me, I've been having this conversation. You and I have been having it a lot off camera or somewhat, not a whole bunch. But I have been having it with other people, and one of the people would be the brother that I'm going to be bringing on, or I'll be bringing on shortly. So a real quick story on how we met. So I belong to a great workout group. It's called the F3 Nation. So I invite everyone to check it out. Go to the website, and basically it's a peer-led workout group for men. We get up, crack of dawn. It's like crazy early, 5 a.m., and we go into the gloom together. And it's been great for me, specifically during COVID, with everything that's happening, but then also with the situation with being a caregiver. Those two pillars, before we even start to get into social unrest and racial injustice and all those things, were really heavy for me at the beginning of the year. And F3 Nation has been pivotal in not only my health from a physical standpoint, but just emotionally as well, and being able to kind of talk and connect and do some of the things that you talked about, right? Just be able to have a sense of connection, and then everyone having a common purpose. So definitely a fan of the brotherhood that we have there. So one of the reasons why I'm so attached is because one of the people that was actually leading it when I started is this brother right here. Always consistent, always stepped up, and then always kind of checked in afterwards, kind of see how I was doing, and just in a very open way, but an authentic way. And so he and I started developing a relationship, and we've had conversations around some of this, and we disagree on many things. But I've always appreciated the fact that we could just sit down and just try to talk about stuff, and then, hey, if we didn't agree, we just go grab one of his beers. So, because they're to the the various.
This is a post-workout morning beer, just to be specific.
Well, not in the morning, but
why not?
Other times, not in the morning. It's too early, man. It's like 6 a.m. literally when we finish. So it's way too early.
It's a good time to start drinking these days.
So if people hear us refer to each other by different names, my F3 Nation name that was given to me is Carmen Sandiego. So he may call me Carmen just by habit, because that's how we know each other, and I may call him Pi, which is his F3 name, but his birth name is Eric, and I'm gonna see if I'm gonna mess this up. Felgenhauer, and we're gonna bring him in right now. What's up, my brother?
What's going on?
How you doing, man?
I love listening to the story. I didn't know if it was going to be something you remembered that I didn't remember.
No, man. No, I remember it was cold and I was really out of shape, and I remember that you were leading a lot, and that stood out to me. So I was like, hey, this is somebody I want to connect with. Then I also remember when COVID really hit the state, you were very vocal around making sure that we stayed together, we stayed communicating and stuff like that. And so that was powerful, man. Very powerful.
Yeah, well, thank you, Royce and Torian, for having me on. I know I saw a shout out by Torian that said, hey, is there any MAGA guys or someone out there that wants to jump on the program, or however you worded it? I was like, man, let's do this. MAGA shirts and flags everywhere. I'm extremely patriotic, but I did grab this hat. This is my son's.
Okay.
I don't push politics in the house. The boys see who I am. Not afraid to wear it right on my chest right here at home. But they, a couple of them are in kind of Republican groups, conservative groups. And my youngest son, I always tell him, be careful. You can be proud, you can be loud, but do it at the right time, right? So he's got 2 or 3 of these hats. He's got a red one. I tell him to be smart. Be smart when he wears it and where he wears it, and don't be getting people's face and stuff of that nature. So this is his hat, not mine, but I'll probably wear it for this event here.
So let me ask you a question. So why does he have to be smart when he wears it?
Because the environment we're in, very, very divisive. You can see the news now with, I'm 100% with the Constitution and our right to protest. I'll absolutely stand by anybody for whatever reason. But there is an element with what's going on now that can be extremely dangerous. My dad always taught me, be aware of your surroundings. And Torian, I remember you showing me pictures, and
so
went out and were part of in the crowd, if you will, with some of these, and observing from afar, right? So you were firsthand. I'm just getting news snippets of some of the violence. So that's what, as a parent,
let's be real clear about the notion of violence in these things. The study out of Princeton looked at 10,000 of the protests that have gone on and found that 3% of them were totally peaceful. And that's not, and I think it's also really important to know that that's not just on the side of the protesters, also peaceful from the police standpoint. Like, because when we say 7% were violent, we also need to acknowledge that some of that was cops, not all of it was protesters. So it's been a mix. But 93% of them have not been violent. So I need to acknowledge that what we see in the news is what the news wants us to see and what will get them ratings. You know, it's not the vast majority have been peaceful.
Well, you know, if you're talking about a study and you're looking at something that's in a sterile environment and, 3% and 97% and this and that, that's all fine, well and good. But when we see the 3% that is violent in Chicago, our hometown here, an element right in the front, you could see the Chicago police cameras focus on a group of people who went outside the protests marching down the street off into Grant Park with umbrellas, sharpened big plastic objects, frozen ice bottles were put down. That's what I'm concerned about for my answering Torian's question for me. What are you concerned about? Your son wearing a hat. I don't want him going out to a protest against conservatism or Trump or whatever it is, just to rile up people. You know what I'm saying? Be proud of who you are, but don't get in people's faces. Don't
be antagonistic.
Speak about what you're proud of, but do it in a way. Martin Luther King and Mahatma Gandhi did it in a very, very good way. We needed to be shooken up during those times on certain issues and the peaceful protests, the marches, and that. But yes, Royce, absolutely, 97% of the time, if they're peaceful and everything, great, that's awesome, and we should hold that up. I am not a big fan of the mainstream media. I get a lot of my information and news from a lot of different narratives, and then I make my judgment on, that information. But the mainstream media on both sides, I don't like it these days. The journalism has kind of fallen apart like a wet paper bag, and it's become just so divisive and just snippets and going after, people in positions.
So where can, I agree with you. But where can people get unbiased news, though? I haven't found a source yet. So I find myself, when I'm watching things, and I watch everything far left, far right, trying to extrapolate what is like factual, because you mentioned this, Royce. You talked about science, right? So what is factual that I can go back and say, hey, this is true? Or is this some number that's wrapped up in someone's perception of the truth that's kind of presented as such? I haven't found a source where I can do that yet. So
not much. There's not much out there. And that's why you need numerous narratives. You need to, get information from a lot of sources. And I think that an intelligent person can take that data. I'm a math guy, right? My F3 name. What is it, Torian?
Pi, 3.14.
Okay. I'm a numbers guy. So, you can take many data points and then diverge kind of into a decision with your own history and knowledge. And that's how I do it. I'm not looking for the perfect news source. How do I know that is perfect? Right, it's a human being who's conveying this information. So you've got the fact checkers and you've got the chart that shows where they're left, where the sources are left and right, and truthful and not as truthful. And they're all over the spectrum. So I try to take many narratives. I like some of the stuff that's just fun to listen to, and I don't want to be boring and wear a lab coat and get the perfect information and be a robot and spit it out. So long answer to your question.
So there was a comment that came in about the time when you mentioned, I just want want my son to be smart about where he does this. I think it's Kimberly's comment. That's how I feel just being black. And, and I think it's an important thing to note that little window of experience is a window into what it's like to be black in this country. And that's not an identity. That's not a mask it's not a hat she can take off, so to speak. Like, what do you do with that?
I mean, just here, we're just thinking off the top of our head, right? I didn't prepare any.
Yeah, this wasn't a question I intended to ask either.
I would say, be smart. And I don't mean that in any way that, well, you shouldn't go here and you shouldn't go there. You'll know what smart is. There are certain places where you're not going to go down on Route 6 in Joliet into a biker bar.
But is that acceptable to you? Like, we supposedly live in a free country. How is it acceptable to say we live in a free country and yet a black woman has to fear for her life just for being a black woman?
Well, fear comes from the person. You decide your feelings, believe it or not. And
feelings are not rational. They live in the subconscious. They're not something that we can control. We can sometimes control how we react to them if we don't have so much trauma involved. But like, they happen. They're chemical reactions in our body. What we do with them, I agree with you. There are times when we can make choices around that. The fact is, should somebody who's black be afraid to walk a street in this country? Any street?
No.
I tried to answer the question before I was cut off, but you make a choice to feel. And through practice, and it could be meditation, it could be certain Eastern religions, you decide. Now, there is the fight, your heart racing, but if someone says something racist to you or they make a comment, you decide on how you react to that. So to be in fear, it depends on the situation. It's a very broad experience. Is she going into
tell me about a time when you were afraid
situation in a provocative way, or do you mean just where there's a crowd where it should be 50-50? We're going to work. We're on a bus, a train, a taxi, an Uber. I mean, you'd have to expound on that, but I am still of the thought that you control your feelings, your thoughts, and your decisions on how you want to react to things.
So wait, before you get into that, so let's make the connection, because we haven't talked about Make America Great Again at all. We're making some assumptions in our conversation right now. So are we saying that Make America Great Again is racist? Is that what we're implying in this conversation? Or isn't racist? I mean,
us three as a program here.
Yeah, just as we're talking, because we're talking about racism. We're talking about feeling threatened as a black person in America, which I have felt that way, and I do feel that way at times, right? So I identify with that, but I still want to connect it to MAGA, which is the topic of the show, right? Like, how do those two things connect? Is my question.
So my whole thing on MAGA is it's two perceptions, if you will. One is capital M, capital A, capital G, capital A, red hat, and it was thrown up as a slogan by the president to run this way, and it doesn't really mean just make America great again, like someone would have said before 2016. It's that side, and people choose to look at that like a bull looking at a red cape. I think they're colorblind, but anyway, you know what I'm saying? Like, holy cow, I'm going to charge at that. I'm angry. It sets me off. So there's that. And then there is the true, I really think the president ran on his campaign as, we are divisive as hell as a country. I want to get the country back to make it great again, where kind of like the 9/11 feeling, where we all came together for a specific purpose. Let's lift our country.
All came together? Muslims were facing horrible.
Like, under us. And, for a time period, whether it was an hour, a day, everybody had in their hearts that we just got attacked. Two of the tallest buildings that office people just got burned to the ground. And that was a stab in America's heart. And not everybody, but I would say a majority of Americans felt like we need to come together and lift ourselves up and get back to where, America should be. So that's kind of like make America great again. Let's somewhat come together. We're not 100% ever going to come together as a country, every little person. I mean, on 9/11, my son's friend at Illinois Tech College downtown posted a really nice 3 paragraphs remembrance of 9/11. And here he gets attacked by 10 people on Facebook that, oh, it was the U.S. government, and why are you holding that up? We should be, people just went far left on him. Like, come on. He didn't say something against the people who attacked the towers. He was just saying, let's just remember the people who lost their lives on that day,
Well, I mean, but how, okay, I just can't even get behind the notion that America united after 9/11. I just can't. I watched racism run rampant, and it was as though somebody had handed a license to hurt, mutilate, maim, or kill anyone that they thought was Muslim, which was basically anybody who was a person of color. A huge portion of this country are people of color, and I watched racism just go through the roof. So to think that we're going to go back to that kind of unity, I mean, in one sense, I guess I could see how you would think that he accomplished it, because we're right there again.
Well, you're pinpointing something that's not what I was focusing on. I was focusing on, and we choose to see kind of parts of situations.
If I'm black, I don't get to choose to see.
The businesses that came together, the police that came together, the firemen, the people who surrounded everything to get back up again. Yes, I agree with you, Royce, that there were situations and intense, volatile, that people were pointing out Muslims or people of the of certain faiths. I think they were angry, they were mad that Muslims weren't coming out and saying, we denounce that terrorism, strong and advocates against it. I don't know. I really never had a sit-down conversation with someone who was that angry. I try to avoid that and surround myself with more positiveness, if you will. But I don't think
I want to
nasty and crazy with everybody. There was a small subset sect. And that's like today. The right, the conservatives, we're not the alt-right. We are not the KKK. We denounce that loud and proud. We can't stand
No, your president did not denounce it.
And the far right. And here people say, oh, the president, he loves the KKK. And it's just false. It's a fake rhetoric, and it's just built on just lies.
When the white supremacists marched in Charlotte and he said there's good people on both sides, he condoned white supremacists.
No, he did not.
That is exactly what he did.
Narrative and play back the audio. He started to talk about the people who assembled there the night before, and it was about a statue that was being taken down. And he said there's good people on both sides of that. So, Royce, that's false. You got to check your facts on that situation.
So why does he repost white supremacist tweets?
You'd have to give me a specific example, but I'm really not going to go down that avenue, because a lot of the stuff is taken out of context. What was he talking about at the time? And, just a random general statement like that, you're just broad brush painting an individual. And
okay, listeners, throw a link in there.
I didn't even vote for the primaries. But when it comes to the general election, yes, I voted for President Trump, and I'll vote for him in 2020.
What were you going to say, Royce?
Somebody who's at their computer. Yeah, okay, there you go. Huh? There's the Trump retweets video of a parent supporter saying white power. The number of times I have seen that and then done the research, yes, and double checked it to make sure it was a white supremacist source, and that has come out as true. I can't even state the number of times it's happened. So it's a thing. It's well accepted. It's accepted even by people within the more conservative end of politics in this country, that this has been a regular thing of him. The other thing is that Like all of what we've talked about with 9/11 ignores the fact that we went into 2 countries full of brown people and have been killing brown people for 20 years over there now. And that, again, this somehow is acceptable.
Who's we? You mean as a country, or
yes, as a country?
Military, or because our military was there through Bush and Obama and Trump. I mean,
and
I don't know where you're going with that.
Well, my point is, again, back to the notion that we were united. We aren't. We haven't been.
We were united at an event when our buildings were taken down and over 4,000 people lost their lives.
And people like me.
I think,
and we all agree that was horrific, terrible.
No. I mean, yes and no. I'm going to say yes and no, because I also sit with absolute understanding of people who are so desperate, who are oppressed regularly on a daily basis by us as a country, and their hatred of us must grow to the point where they have no other rational choice other than to hijack a plane and drive it into a building. What would it take for you to be that desperate?
I could never justify that situation.
Absolutely not. So let me ask you this, because a conversation like this is where I go back to the concept of expanding our own horizons, right? So what would make a conversation, not even this conversation, what would make a relationship with Make America Great Again better? I'm asking either one of you all. I'm saying because we've kind of implied that Make America Great Again is racist, right? Inherently racist. And
I think it is, because anytime you refer to the past, America is only.
I got you. I'm with you. I know the argument. I got you 100%, right? And we're taking it back to, like, the wars of the 80s and 90s that America has perpetually been in. So what I'm trying to do is recenter it back to the concept that we're talking about, and it's it's divisive. Obviously, we've had people say, "Hey, we're not even going to watch the show," and people that are just watching the show because of the topic. And so what I'm attempting to do in this conversation is there any particular way, any way to try to find common ground around some level of values in the dialogue?
Well, I think you've got 2 camps that are entrenched, and it's very difficult to bring them together. And then you've probably got a middle of the population that, I think you can look at a Trump hat or Black Lives Matter and really talk about it sensibly and see where civil people can come to an agreement. And I know that's very general and very broad, but I don't think Make America Great Again, that is not racist at all. And people are taking it and defining it themselves. I've heard a couple definitions here. You can't go back to those years. America's horrible. We go into wars and we kill brown people. And I mean, if that's the way you want to believe America is, then that's your choice. That's your perception. And that's what you think about all day is what you will become.
But this comes right off of the president's notion of we need to return to something that we once were. And there has not been a time in America's history when we were not a racist country.
I think after Reagan came in, after Carter had this country just so down on themselves and we were beaten down, he lifted the country back up and we had 8 years of prosperity. Yes, we got some runaway
only
debt.
For white people.
I mean, Ray, that's absolutely false, Royce. Only so you're using absolutes now, only for white people.
Okay, that's fair. No,
we're not using that because I was going to say that's not necessarily the case.
Statistically,
I thought we were really going to have an intelligent, civil conversation, but I mean, you're throwing some butcher knives at me, not even daggers.
I can't abide by the notion that Reagan lifted this country up. I just can't abide by it. The racial divide along money grew worse under his presidency than at any point prior to that. And the second point that you stated,
a wider divide.
A wider divide?
When everybody is lifted up.
But they're not lifted up.
People
the bottom are not lifted up.
Pay more money than they were 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago.
No,
Way
that's
more. And
factually incorrect.
more social programs, they live way better. So what's wrong with a divide when you've got people making a lot of money at the top? There's nothing wrong with that.
I don't necessarily have problems with people making money. My issue is that the same dollar that would have bought a whole lot back in 1974 doesn't buy anywhere near as much. And that comparison, that rate of inflation, has not tracked with our wages. So where the median house back, and these statistics are a little foggy, but the median house in 70 would have cost you about 3 to 5 years wages, right? For the median house, median income. The same median house today runs you 20 years of wages. That's a basic comparison that takes the median wage today and the median house today and compares it to median wage and median house. So this allows what your notion of people have been making more, and says, but that making more is not valid because we can't buy with it what we could have back in 70. It's just not, it doesn't work. And then to think that all ships have risen with this tide, when the disparity of the number of people of color who are incarcerated at much higher rates today, who are still have a massive wealth gap. Do we have more folks, people of color, who are middle income today than we did in the 50s? Yes, statistically, but I'm not sure about percentage-wise. Like, this is the problem. That gap has gotten bigger.
So how does this tie back to MAGA?
There's nothing wrong with it. Yeah, you're mixing two things.
Okay, so what I was trying to say about MAGA is that Trump is the one that has referenced several times that we want to go back to the 50s. We want to go back to when this was good.
I've never heard him say that. Back to the 50s.
It's been at least 3 different times that I've heard that from.
Back to the 50s.
Okay.
All right, I'll look.
This notion that we should return to something when we were better, when our streets were safer, when our borders were more secure. And no, it just doesn't work because it's all lies.
It's not all lies, no.
Those are lies.
So, let me ask you guys this.
Go back to the 50s with technology and the poor health conditions and everything. He's saying we need America, the spirit of America and coming together and stuff like that. Not
so is America more united today than it was when he came into office?
He doesn't want any of that.
Is America more united today than when he came into office?
Listen,
is America united? No, I mean, the divisiveness is crazy. You've got groups saying that they want to get rid of parts of the Constitution. You want to get rid of the Electoral College. I mean, just nonsense, radical extremism. So no, I don't think it is. And that all built up over the 8 years prior to 16.
Well, I personally, I don't think America has ever lived up to her aspirations. So that's we haven't even come close to that. So
go into a little more detail on that, Torian, because I don't see that. I think from the 20s to the 40s to the 60s to the 80s to now, it is a better continual improvement, Kaizen country, and it's the best country in the world. So I don't get this broad notion of, we're going backwards, things are worse, there's more racism. I think that's all false.
I don't think there's more racism. I don't think there's more racism. I've experienced racism my whole life, so it's not more. It's just more people are seeing it the way I see it. I mean, it's kind of been there. But I also don't think everybody is a racist. I don't think that just because you're white that you're a racist, or because you're black I don't buy into that notion of absolutes for anyone. And I've always said that. My message around that has always been consistent. But to answer your question specifically, though, we've never had liberty and justice for all. Ever. So not even close. And things have gotten better in some areas. They may have gotten worse in other areas. But if we're truly saying that we're living our aspirations in a sustainable way, that's what we should have, or at least a higher version of it. And we don't. I mean, there's some huge gaps that we see within race, within gender, but specifically for the sake of this conversation, we're talking about race. But let me tie this back a little bit, right? So I want to know what are you guys convinced of? because that's important to me. Because in this conversation, I hear a lot of, not this conversation, but just when we talk about MAGA, people are usually convinced of certain things, like the president is racist, or Black Lives Matter, or all rioters, or we have these things. So what are you convinced of? I guess pie, and then I'd like to hear what Royce is convinced. I mean, I can tell you mine, but mine is pretty broad, so I'm not going to be that specific.
What are we convinced of?
In regards to MAGA, in regards to Make America Great Again, and the concept of what the perception is, what it means.
Well, I think if you look at the campaign promises that President Trump ran on, he wanted to build a stronger military that was torn down in the previous administration. Supply them right, build them back up, have a strong military, because our country, for probably the majority of the history, we've had a strong military. And times are different now, I agree, but he said stronger military. He wants the economy to get pumping, roaring, the GDP, where I think President Obama said it'll never get above 3. I might be wrong there. Maybe he said 2.5, 3, whatever.
Somewhere around there. I remember
Trump came in, he did some lowering of taxes and got the economy, and the GDP was way up at 4, even over 4. So he promised that, and he did that. That was making America great again. Strong military, great economy, unemployment, historic lows, get people back working again. That's making America great again, a foundation. Now you can go in and look at little instances and pinpoint stuff and throw darts at him by a little word or this or that, but that's not what he's about. The guy doesn't need to be president. He's a billionaire. He's not taking any salary. He writes that check that he gets paid, because I guess technically he has to get paid, and he sends it off and donates it to something.
Wait, so
he doesn't need this. He can go off on his own and retire and have all the money he has and spend it with his family. I mean, I would never want to do every day what this guy does and have darts being thrown at him by everybody, even Republicans. The guy is not a politician. He was a business owner that came in. When I hear, oh, he's a Republican and the right, no. People voted because they didn't want a career politician. They didn't want Hillary. And MAGA is, that's what I feel MAGA is about. And I got into some certainty, right, about his campaign promises and what he is delivering on. And he's trying hard, and he's fighting against, he lost the House. So it's not as easy as his first 2 years, but he's doing what he campaigned. And that's what people went to the polls and voted for, was what he said, and then put your actions where your mouth was. So, that's my 2 cents on more specifics on what MAGA is about.
All right, Royce, what are you convinced of, bro? I see you processing. I know you got a bunch of questions.
I'm trying, man. I'm trying. Right. Look, I'm down for a conversation about how we move forward. I'm down for a conversation of how we move toward living into liberty and justice for all. I see nothing in our history that actually says that this country has anything to return to. I mean, if there's anything hopeful about my thoughts, it's that I think our best years as a continent are in front of us. Because I think a history of genocide, I think a history of slavery, I think a history of constant elitism in this country is the real problem. That Constitution was not written for me. It was written for people like Trump. It was written for people who never wanted to be held accountable. It was written for people who wanted to own people, including George Washington. So when we look at this history, I can't resonate with anything that people talk about when they talk about MAGA. I literally can't find an entry point, except that I do hope that we keep getting better, because what we've been, as far as I'm concerned, is unacceptable.
So okay. So it's really kind of polarized.
Can I ask a quick question just on what Royce said real quick?
Go ahead.
And I appreciate all the the information and the commentary and all that. I really do. It's a true appreciation. But Royce, so when I look back in history and then you come forward, not going back, we're not going to go back, right? It makes no sense. But when you look back and you're coming forward, don't you agree that we have gotten better, since the founding of the country? In not always, not in a vacuum, perfect way, but we have improved in a lot of ways. Women vote. Everybody has equal rights, whether they're given all the time.
They're completely inaccessible. Yeah.
So have we not gotten better over time? Maybe an incremental or something, but we have gotten better.
I think that 250 years is way too damn long for the kinds of thing that there were people who wrote the Constitution who knew that slavery was wrong and that we couldn't create tiers of citizens. They knew that then. And we are still fighting that battle now. We still see racism that is enforced through policies, systemic racism, institutional racism, all the catchphrases. So part of me wants to say, yeah, but we've known that this was wrong from the beginning. Why didn't we do that? Instead, we went with rich white men as the end all be all. And that's where I'm just I have this gut churning reaction when you talk about this, because I know that it's not better for me. It wasn't better for a whole lot of people that I knew. It wasn't better for my children. I just yeah.
So my 2 cents would be, I do think we've had progress over the centuries. I think it could be exponentially better because we have way more potential than that. My question would always be, so we are where we are, right? I mean, I believe I've experienced, and I know systemic racism to exist. I've experienced white supremacy, so I know that to exist firsthand, and those within my immediate circle and outside circle. But at the exact same time, I don't believe that it's this ubiquitous absolute thing that is applied to every person based on the melanin that they're born into. That's a dissonance to me, right? And so what I'm trying to find in this conversation is, Royce, are you saying that we just start over from scratch? I mean, how do we get better? That's what I want to know. How do we get better, right? How do we have a dialogue where we can say, all right, yeah, the Constitution would say that Torian wasn't even a man. It doesn't say that now. What do we do going forward so we can actually achieve the aspirations that we're supposed to have? That's the question.
Okay, so let's look at that precise statement right there.
Yeah.
I actually do think it's time to abandon the Constitution and start over.
Okay.
I think, as somebody mentioned, the two-party system just means that the rich elites only have to write 2 checks. And that's why they own both parties.
Real quick.
So
I have a friend when I lived in China, and he pulled me over I will never forget this night. He said, I don't understand. You guys are so adamant about your system, and you only have one more choice than we do.
Yeah. Yes.
I had to laugh. I was like, it's kind of right. Anyway, sorry.
No, so that's, no. I forget I need to be laughing more. Sorry. But one of the things we forget is that in the beginning of this country, the Articles of Confederation, Articles of Federation, the beginning of this country, the first rule of law was not the Constitution. They tried it. It didn't work. It had some things to it that just didn't work. And so they said, okay, let's try a different route. And they went the constitutional route. My point there is that we don't have to lose some things that actually matter, that this country may have right, liberty and justice for all, which is an interesting notion. Okay, put that at the center. I'm not sure we have to lose that in order to change this stuff, but I do think everything about the Constitution has to change.
Okay, so
For example,
real quick.
Let's start with the 14th Amendment, right? The one that said slavery is illegal is the reason we know that one, right? Slavery is illegal, except if you're in prisons. And then we see the incarceration rates of people of color. And there's a direct line then between, slavery is illegal, but it's legal in the prisons, to now what we have to do is just lock up people of color And guess what? The people with the money are still going to get their money because they're going to have industry in the prisons, and slavery is now legal. So
Okay.
that's what I mean by the entire system. It just keeps adapting because we've allowed people with money to play this game. I'm guessing, Eric, that you pay your taxes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I do too. So how does the owner of Amazon, a billionaire, not pay taxes? Like, how does Amazon, or not the owner,
I'll
how
tell
does
you.
the company,
No.
how does the company of Amazon not pay, sorry, I shouldn't be ripping on him, but there's other reasons I'm upset with him. But how does the company not pay taxes? How is it that you and I are doing our part?
It's the legal loopholes, right? But I think we're mixing a whole lot.
This is this is to me what I'm saying is that this system has become too convoluted. It is time to burn it down and start over.
Okay, so you made a comment, and I want to hear from both of you guys. You said we can keep what we have right. So what do we have right in the United States? What have we gotten right?
You've gotten a lot right. I mean,
Talk to me. Talk to me.
I
What do we
can't
have? I'm
believe-
making a list too.
Can't believe we want to burn down the Constitution. It just boggles my mind. You know, you can make amendments. There's laws. It just sounds like you want anarchy and let's just throw things away when they don't work for a minute or in like an isolated situation.
It's not isolated though. That's my point. Just because it doesn't happen to you and me doesn't mean it's not isolated.
So let's start with what do we have right? What are we doing right?
So I mean, the companies of today can facilitate change much quicker. Your technology companies and all of this that's available can get down to anybody in the United States. Whereas 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, some things were only accessible to a very minute amount of people.
Okay, so innovation
with social media, technology. I mean, the phones we have these days, it's just amazing how powerful they are and the information that you can get very quickly. And crowdsourcing of information and quick information, it's a way better country, you know, and the ability for people to advance faster is there.
Okay.
And this is through capitalism, and that could be a whole nother topic, obviously. But for my goals, for a lot of people, millions and millions of people, tens of millions, 100 million, 200 million people, this country is the best in the world to get accomplished what you want to get done. Are there hurdles? Are there barriers? Absolutely. And again, I go back to what I said earlier. It's what you focus on all day is what you will become. And some people do have it tougher. I mean, I'm not going to deny that. I don't think a lot of people deny that, but I hear a lot of rhetoric and narrative that just is parroted constantly. And you have a conversation like we are now and go deep into it, you kind of find out where people are coming from. But I think this country it's beautiful. It's the best nation on the globe. And the accessibility, and that's the key. Because if you want to do something, it doesn't matter your skin color. There are examples of people with all different skin color that have reached the pinnacle, the top 1%. And again, I did say it is more difficult for certain people. And location, or how and where they're coming from. Is it more difficult than someone else who may have an easier glide path?
Okay. So let me I have two words. I have innovation and technology / data. That's what we're doing right so far. Is that fair?
Well, I mean, just when you hear that cops are bad, again, it's a minority sect of bad individuals. So I think the policing systems, the training. I do have a brother who's second in command. I was in the military. My next door neighbor is a police officer. So we have conversations. I'm not just saying this as a random thought, but the training, the equipment, the knowledge, all of that has gotten way better over decades. And even in the cities where we have these big issues and problems, I mean, there are people of color in these positions and making these decisions, yet we still have a fostering problem of crime and things going on. So I think the systems have gotten much better with
Policing
technology,
systems.
training, and just police in general, law and order have gotten better.
Okay.
Very recently, with the anarchy and mayors just letting total lawlessness and out of control situations going on, that is not good. But that's very temporary, and that will come to a halt. It has to. I mean, billions of dollars in destruction are happening from these riots. It's just craziness, just absolute craziness.
So, Royce, so what is
that will go away?
Okay, so we got innovation, technology, policing / law and order, and the systems around it. Those are the three things that we're doing
Health.
right.
How about health? Turn of the century, what was the average age people died?
So when you say health, you mean like longevity in life, or
turn of 2 centuries ago, 1900s.
Okay, so you mean like technology?
We're living way longer. I mean, that's the great thing, right? We're living longer, but that's also a problem when it comes to money and how much money you have to retire on and live on way down the road. I mean, health, it's just the mortality tables have continued to, longevity is just increasing off the charts. So that's gotten better over time, and access to medications and health foods, and even the big organic food movement away from GMOs and all that stuff. So again, with technology and knowledge, access to that stuff, more people have access to that, not just the elite.
Okay.
Or
so if we take these four things, well, actually, Royce.
So what are the four things?
I have innovation, technology, policing / law and order, and health / access to medicine and longevity. Those are my four things. But that hurt. I'm reflecting back from my man.
Yeah. No, I just.
What do you say? What say you? What have we gotten right, man? As a country.
The one and only thing that I think we have that is special, or was special, and I'm not sure it is any. I'm not sure it's further. I'm not sure it's actually still that unique today. The one thing we had was the notion of freedom or liberty. We misapplied it, and we continue to misapply it, and we have to unfuck this system if we're going to apply it correctly, if we're going to actually have anything even close to freedom. I honestly, that's it. And that's why personally, like I look at that list and I think we are not the leaders in innovation anymore. I know that we were at one time. We are not anymore. We are not leaders in technology anymore. I know that we were. We are not anymore. I know that we were leaders in healthcare, but we are not anymore. But we are not. Our longevity is actually stopped increasing or has now started decreasing, depending on whose statistics you look at. But compared to other countries where that march of longevity has continued upward, we're definitely losing ground around healthcare. So I look at those things. I think those things are, and that's why, to me, we have to start over with a new system of government. Because
so you're saying we only the one thing that I'm extrapolating is we have the concept of freedom. That's it.
We had that as unique. I can get that anywhere now.
Well, I'm just saying what I'm trying to understand is, what do you all feel that we've done right as a country? That's it. So we have innovation, technology, policing and law and order, health and access to it, health / access to medicine, and then fifth we have the concept of freedom or liberty for all. The concept of, not necessarily the application.
What have we done right? That's different.
That's my
opportunity.
Question. Yeah.
I mean, that's why we're still one of, if not the best country for immigrants to come to. They love America.
We're losing that one too.
Well, it's a matter of opinion.
But I agree. No, that one's factual. But I agree with you that opportunity is something. There is something about opportunity that there's at least the perception. There's the hope from people in this country. I tend to hear that there's a hope of opportunity.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I read a comment. I'm not laughing at you, Royce. I'm sorry.
The move to North Korea?
Yeah, I think that's my Pennsylvania buddy. I'm sorry. No, I want to address a point, though, Royce, is Torian was collecting some information from me. And this is on the fly. I mean,
yeah, we're not. What I'm trying to.
I give you a list of 100. I want to comment on Royce's comment that I was giving you things that I felt, maybe I misread your question, but where we're doing it right and we've done it right and we've gotten better. Kind of what I was interpreting. Yeah. And Royce brings up, we're not the leader, we're not the best. And I'm thinking, I don't think that's what Torian asked. And that's not what my response was. You can still be good and have another country pass you up and you're still doing good. I mean, of course, it's a global development that's going around the world. Yeah. In the 50s, you didn't South American countries and over in Europe and Asia and Africa, there was nothing, right? They didn't really have an economy. But today, with globalization and companies moving all around the world, the opportunity is huge globalistically.
Wait, I got a time out. There was an economy. It just wasn't a Western European capitalist economy. There was an economy, no question. There was an economy. Yes. Go ahead.
Very true.
Continue.
Very true. Well, and I think, I mean, you're right. You don't have to be the best. I was responding to what I was hearing as the notion of American exceptionalism, which to me is dead. That notion is dead. I would rather live in any number of countries other than the U.S. right now. This just doesn't work anymore, and we refuse to even try to change it.
Is it? Oh, I don't mean to cut you off.
Well, so I'm noticing the time. I know we're.
Oh, it's time? Man, I didn't even know it's 6 o'clock. I haven't even gotten to my list of stuff.
I know. I haven't gotten to mine either. Okay, so I kind of feel like we're not gonna solve the world's problems today. Eric, something you said in our pre-show hit me in the gut, and are you comfortable bringing? Are you okay if I bring something up here?
Eric. Torian knows me. I'm wide open.
All right.
I speak my mind. I am who I am. I don't sugarcoat. I don't hide things. My wife says you gotta calm down and sugarcoat yourself. You don't offend people. And this goes back to my previous comments. Is I don't. People get offended. I am not out to offend. Okay. So yeah, bring it up. Let's go.
Okay. So you mentioned something about you mentioned trying to connect with your daughter, and that there's an emotional difference that you experience, an emotional gap that you experience between yourself and your daughter.
Ignorance. Let's be frank.
So that right there, that gap is part of what I go after personally in the work that I'm doing. Because what we see in other cultures is that men are not as stunted emotionally the way we are in this country. That's the gap that I go after, because I think it's unacceptable that we as fathers can't connect with our daughters the same way. And I would say, because actually in my household, it's my son that's actually more sensitive most of the time. So I think we're generalizing along gender lines, but that generalization is like any generalization. It's not always true, right? As you've mentioned. So what would it be like? Can you imagine? I don't know what the question is here, but there's a question around this for me. What would you give up to have the emotional capacity to connect with your daughter? What price would you pay?
I don't think I want that.
Oh.
I don't think I want 100% of that. I like to learn. I like to discover, but I also don't think I need to be perfect. It's kind of like Lombardi said. He said something to the fact that I don't want you guys to win all the time. I want you to be in. What did he say? He said something of, don't be perfect, but try to strive to be perfect or something of that nature. And it's kind of like the journey. I mean, that little experience I had with her, it was eye-opening, and I'm ignorant, and I didn't know what to do. But now I can grow from there and learn. But would I give up something to be there, like bam, instantly?
No,
I don't
I'm
think
not
so.
saying
The experience and the travels and the growing and learning. This show I'm learning. I really am. Royce, I've listened to you on two other podcasts, and everything. And I have a whole different opinion on you now, bud. It's not a personal one. It is wow. I'm going to go look at some stuff a little differently. Am I going to change? I'm probably not. But it's the journey. It is the understanding. And Torian and I, it's kind of weird. I think maybe we hit it off too well in our 30-minute discussions in the gloom, at cafeteria, or do we just do the dance really well and try and learn from each other? It's kind of wild. But to answer your question, Royce, I don't want to be there instantaneously, and maybe that's a fault of mine. I don't know. I'm still discovering it.
I ask because that experience that you mentioned hits me right in the heart immediately, because personally, I'm with you. Emotionally there, but when we look at data on men, especially white men, the amount of emotional disconnect that we experience in our personal relationships is massive. And so that's where that question comes from, is I know that this is a challenge. It's not just a challenge for you. It's not just a challenge for me. When we talk about this as white men, this is a massive challenge. This is the heart of our challenge.
Can I give the background on the situation real quick?
Well, it's up to you. I mean, I'm more interested in your experience than the background, honestly.
Well, I think for the audience to understand, because they could take it one way, like this dude does not have any connection with his daughter at all. And that's not what you're saying, but that could be a perception of the audience.
I hear that.
She just turned 11, and this was recently, let's say within the last year. And I'm going by her room, and she was sniffling. I'm like, what is she? She sounds upset. And I am connected with her. She's daddy's girl. She sits on my lap. I give her hugs. We do have a really good bond and connection and feelings. So this was just a weird one where I'm going by the room. I'm like, I didn't hear mom yelling at her, or, I didn't yell at her. What? You don't want to go to bed upset or crying. And I go in there, and she said, I don't have bears. And I'm like, she's not 3 or 4, with this little bear. It's got the bear head and the little, people call it different things, the little nookie thing, the little, some kids suck their thumb with it. It's like a little blanket, little blanket on the bear head. So it's kind of 2 years old, in my mind, 5 years old-ish. So I'm thinking, bears, you're getting all distraught over bears. What's going on? I just kind of, I didn't know how to deal with that. So that was the background on that little.
Yeah,
I
so
know
the
where
audience,
you're coming from. Problem with the men, women.
Just to be clear to the audience, that was the reason that I brought this up, was because I noticed a moment of what I heard from Eric's story was that he has connection with his daughter, and he experienced a moment of disconnect and was trying to figure out what was going on. And it's a very common thing. Carl's mentioning some important notes there.
Oh, Carl,
so
this is my guy from undergrad, from college, man.
Yeah, white men have the highest. He's referring back to his earlier comment. Can you mention the high level of suicide and drug use because of the lack of emotional understanding? And it spikes, especially in times of economic downturn, especially among white men, because our value is so rooted in that notion of what we produce for the family. And so economic downturn tends to cause these massive spikes. And it is because of emotional disconnect. Or no, studies can't really conclude that. But there's a lot of writing and a lot of science around this is probably what we're looking at. And it has to do with a lot about our culture that we're,
Right,
that
and
needs
I
some.
think a good way to kind of capstone this, because obviously there's a lot that we still could talk about, that we need to talk about, and we're going to when we get on another call. But I think a good way is just to kind of leave it with the emotional connection piece. I mean, that's what this show is about. One of the things that's important to me, and I've been very consistent in my life in, is how to show up holistically and connect with people who I normally wouldn't connect with, or who don't come from where I come from, who I don't identify with, at least from a cursory standpoint. How do you find new ways to do that? So I think we can all get better at finding ways to do it, even if we don't. I mean, I'm reading a lot of the comments and stuff that's here. Even if we don't agree, even in this conversation, there's always some common ground that people can have. That's what I was trying to do with this list here too. Like, there has to be something we can say, you know what? Unless we're just saying, let's torch everything, which I really don't think you want that, my man. I'm telling you, I hear what people are saying.
I'm getting closer to that every day, man.
Even if people thought that they wanted it, nobody would want the cost of that. You're talking about, I'm not going to get into it right now. You're talking about 50 years of just starting from scratch. Nobody wants that.
Instead, we've had 250 years of slavery and
more.
genocide.
Well, we have more than that.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm just talking since our country was official.
I'm with you. But what I'm saying is it's the polarizing stuff that I'm trying to say that in this huge gray area that's super, super wide, there's a whole lot of common ground. So with that, we're going to talk about this behind the scenes, and then we'll come back, because, of course, we got to come back to this topic again. But thank you, everybody, for checking out Where's Your Heart? Peace.
Mm-hmm.